My whole life I've spent time up and down the Oregon coast, and I haven't spent a ton of time in Waldport. So in this video, we're gonna see what Waldport is all about. I think it's really a hidden gem, so stay tuned to learn more. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from the Oregon coast. And if this is your first time to the channel living on the Oregon coast, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. People reach out to us all the time who are thinking about buying a home, selling a home, relocating to the Oregon coast. We love to hear from you. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link below in the description of this video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to the Oregon coast. All right, so what is Waldport all about? Waldport, Oregon, central Oregon coast. It's located about 15 miles south of Newport and just 8 miles north of Yachats. So you look at Newport, you look at Yachats, these are very popular areas. Newport, really heavy on the tourism, a lot of stuff to do, a lot of activities. You have the bayfront, and then of course you have neighborhoods like Night Beach, just really your quintessential Oregon coast town, really has it all. And then down in Yachats, I mean, this is some of the most desirable real estate on the Oregon coast. If you look at, the home prices, the home values, obviously the views that you can get, it's definitely unlike any other community on the Oregon coast. Very desirable, very sought after. So right in the middle of these areas, you have Waldport, and it may or may not be an area that you've even heard of. And if you have, there's probably a good chance that it's flown under the radar a little bit for you, or you haven't been there. And so in this video, I want to talk about this area of Waldport, why it's so unique, why it's so special, why it could be a great option, whether you are looking for a vacation home, a second home, or an area to live as a full-time resident. All right, so let's get into it. What makes Waldport so special? So Waldport is right on the Alsea Bay, where the Alsea River comes in from the east and flows out to the ocean. I've heard some debate on whether or not you'd say Alsea or Alsea. From what I've seen, from what I've heard being in the area, Alsea is usually how that is pronounced. So if you're in the area, make sure you're saying it right. But this is a huge open bay, huge open water, beautiful sweeping views with a really cool bridge, the Alsea Bay Bridge that goes right over the top of it. So, the views that you can get and the landscape and that dynamic is really unique, and something that you can only get in really a few other towns on the Oregon coast. Newport comes to mind on a larger scale. Towns like Florence, for example, where you're at the mouth of a river. But Waldport, I think, one of the biggest distinctions and one of the things that really stands out to me, it's just totally unspoiled. I mean, this is a small town of 2,200 people that was first settled back in 1870. It was actually settled by, at least a lot of the people that settled there were German. So the word Wald means forest, or Wald in German. So Waldport is literally, forest port, is how that translates. And the town was incorporated in 1911. So this is an old community. It's been there for a long time. And again, it's kind of right in the middle of that central Oregon coast region where, a lot of people love to go for so many reasons. And I think if you look at, some of the best parts about Waldport, it's really laid back. It's really quiet. I mean, yes, there's tourists there, but it's not, shoulder to shoulder everywhere you go, hustle and bustle, like a town like Newport 15 miles to the north. So if you're looking for some peace and quiet, a place to relax, a place that's a little more laid back, I mean, Waldport should really be on your radar. I think the town itself, certainly has everything that you would need. There's a couple of mini marts. There's one Ray's Food Place, which is a local grocery chain in the area. There's a few restaurants, a few cafes. There's a little bit of shopping, things like that, very typical of the Oregon coast, but on a much, much smaller scale. As far as a place that you would live full time, you very well could find yourself traveling north, in particular to Newport, where there's a lot of medical services, for example, like the hospital. There's just, more to offer as far as things that you would buy or things that you would need in your day-to-day life. But again, it's not far. I mean, it's a 20-minute drive, probably at best, unless you're up against some kind of traffic on the highway, but it's really close and really accessible. In fact, I would think of this in a lot of ways as a kind of a neighborhood or bedroom community, of Newport in a lot of ways. And the biggest thing here that really needs to be talked about is the natural beauty, and just this sweeping landscape on the Alsea Bay, where you have crabbing, clams, you have steelhead and salmon. So you have a lot of great things to do on the water, as far as going out and getting your catch. And you can make your way east, and the Alsea River has these different tributaries. So, if you're not into fishing, crabbing, things like that, get in your kayak, get on your paddleboard, get out on the water. And this is an area, that doesn't really get all that crowded. So you're going to see people out there, doing these things, for sure. But again, it's not going to be at the same scale as a lot of these areas in particular that are really heavy on tourism up and down the Oregon coast. So the outdoor activities are really second to none in terms of the accessibility and what it has to offer. And again, even if you don't want to be on the water, there's over 400 species of birds seen in the area throughout the year. So if you want to grab your binoculars, do some bird watching, great. I mean, there's great hiking in the area with the Woodland Trail right in town, right above the downtown area. It has a disc golf course through there as well, which is pretty cool. But even, as you work your way further inland, further east, there's a ton of hiking. You start to get into some elevation. You start to get, further up into the coastal range where you have hiking access throughout there as well. So whether you're on land, on foot, on water, on a boat, in a kayak, whatever it is, there's something for you in this area. And Waldport is broken up into two distinct areas, really. You have Waldport, which is on the south side of the Alsea River, or the Alsea Bay, and the old town runs right through Highway 101. And then on the north side, as you pass the bridge, or as you go over the bridge, you have Bayshore, which is this really big community. It seems like there's a lot of second homes, vacation rental homes, things like that in there, but all throughout that area, there are several access points for the beach, and you actually have to kind of walk up and over a dune to access the beach. So it's not like, vacationers, day trippers are flocking to this area for the beach access, because, whereas it is very accessible in the area, you have to get a little bit off the highway into this neighborhood, and then you have to find parking, and then you have to walk up over this dune. It's not just a place where a ton of people stop off on the highway to access the beach. So because of that, if you're living in this area, you're going to have access to miles of coastline that's almost always going to be pretty free of, a ton of people just running around. So again, that just, is another example of why Waldport is such a quiet and peaceful and laid back place compared to a lot of other towns up and down the Oregon coast. I think in town too as well, there's a 9-hole golf course. So if you're into golfing, might not be the best course on the coast, maybe by any stretch, but either way, if you're into golfing, you do have access to golf right there in town as well. And then if you look at kind of the immediate areas north and south as well, in between Waldport and Yachats, in between Waldport and Newport, to the north, you have a ton of beach access areas, state parks, state rec areas, and day use areas that, some of those might get a little bit crowded with tourism, but you do have a ton of options as far as where you could go out and explore on a day-to-day basis, so where, you're not just accessing the same beach, all day, every day. In that immediate area, it's some of the most beautiful stretch of coastline that you can get on the Oregon coast, because you have a really good, variety in terms of, just kind of these vast sweeping beaches, but also some cliffs and some headlands as well. So it makes for a really dramatic landscape. So Waldport, like a lot of towns up and down the Oregon coast, when they were settled, the timber industry was huge, the fishing industry was huge. I think Waldport was once home to several salmon canneries, as well as more than a couple sawmills as well. So as these industries have become more and more decimated, dating back maybe 4 or 5 decades ago, some of these towns, more than others in particular, have really been hit and become a little bit depressed in terms of their economy, but the Oregon coast as a whole as well has continued to climb back due to tourism. So I know this is a theme with a lot of videos that we do. Tourism is the top industry on the Oregon coast. And Waldport, like any other town, is going to be heavily reliant on tourism, but I think there's another element to it with the bay there, you do get families and vacationers and people with second homes and things like that, but there's also kind of that, outdoor aspect, the fishing, being on the water, where a lot of people will go there, maybe seasonally, and spend the day, spend money at the restaurants, spend money at the stores, but then maybe kind of go about their way. So I think, that might lead to Waldport not being as crowded on a day-to-day basis as some other towns. So I was just recently in Waldport, kind of in preparation for making a video about it, and, not knowing a ton about it, having not spent too much time in the area, this place is really creeping up my list as, of favorite towns for sure. And, I think it's for a lot of the reasons we mentioned. Again, it's just very quiet, very peaceful, very laid back. The views and the landscape are really second to none. I mean, it's as good as you can get on the Oregon coast, and it's just unspoiled. A lot of towns on the Oregon coast, either because of overdevelopment, underdevelopment, economic downturn, some towns, you have to kind of get into the right neighborhood, or, some towns just are going to feel a little bit crowded, whatever it is. But I think Waldport has the perfect combination of everything that makes an Oregon coast town great. And I think, at least at this stage for now, maybe the locals want to keep it this way. You can really chalk this up as a hidden gem for sure. All right, so a couple of things about Waldport that you probably don't know that are super interesting. First and foremost, the old town was built on an Indian burial ground, which, I feel like that's something you hear about like in movies and in stories where, something, that doesn't usually, end up going well. I don't know of anything, as far as like, the town being haunted. I haven't heard anything like that, but I thought that was interesting and definitely worth mentioning, and that might deter some people for one reason or another. But yeah, the old town, the stretch right on 101 where kind of the main shops are, built right on an Indian burial ground. So that's pretty interesting. And another thing is too, if you've ever heard of the Heaven's Gate cult, which, there's documentaries and books about at this point, didn't end well, but so there was this couple that I think one guy in particular that started this cult, but it started as a conference. This guy put out an ad in the newspaper, and the conference took place in Waldport, and basically this guy was saying that he was abducted by a UFO, and he was some kind of prophet, coming back to, tell chosen people that, the aliens were coming back to get them and save them from Earth. Pretty wild stuff. But this basically started, the guy wasn't from Waldport, but for some reason, stopped there, gathered a bunch of people, had a conference, and it ended up where like 30 people, from the town followed along with this cult. They ended up settling in like Southern California. And again, it didn't end well, I'll just say that. But I think there's a documentary on HBO about this story that was pretty interesting. And, it's hard like being in that town, like not having that in the back of your head a little bit. It's just, kind of an interesting story, especially for being such a small town, having something, so wild, kind of spawn, from this area. So, all right, and the last thing about Waldport we're going to talk about is the housing market. So, this is something that to me is really compelling because, again, I've now spent time there. I've explored the area. I understand kind of the dynamics of where it sits geographically next to Newport, next to Yachats. And the median home price is $515,000. So a little bit less than areas in the immediate vicinity. And the home values have only grown 4% year over year. A lot of areas up and down the Oregon coast have grown 25, 30% year over year. So obviously, you know, all around the country, real estate has seen historic, and if you ask me, unsustainable growth, but Waldport for some reason only grew 4%. So, you know, looking at say like a resource like realtor.com, realtor.com actually categorizes Waldport as a buyer's market, and the average days on market is 94 days. So that's a really long time for homes to sit, you know, 3 months before they are under contract. So, you know, I think for what this area has to offer and the proximity to some really great towns and the accessibility to some really great beaches and all the other things that we talked about, I think, you know, you can really find a good deal in Waldport and not a ton of competition, which is awesome. So if I were looking at the Central Oregon coast, this is an area I would definitely be considering. That's Waldport, Oregon. Hope that was helpful. Hope it's an area that maybe you would consider. And if it is an area that you're considering, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link below in the description of this video and schedule a Zoom call with us. You know, I think if Newport is on the radar, even all the way up to Lincoln City, if Lincoln City's on the radar, Depot Bay, down into Yachats. Again, this is only 8 miles from Yachats. People love Yachats. So maybe, you know, Yachats is a little too expensive. You know, Waldport would be a great alternative. And again, that Central Coast region, Waldport kind of sits right in the middle. So yes, it's a little bit of a smaller town, but it has so much to offer. And if you want to check it out, let us know. And if this video was helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. We appreciate you watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. Again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.